This presentation is part of my doctoral research titled, Becoming a Territory of Coexistence, Socio-Material Practices and Multispecies Relationships in the Community of San Jerónimo, Costa Rica. The thesis was defended in late August this year within the graduate program in rural development at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. However, some of the ideas I will present today, particularly those related to spectrality and spectral presences, emerged as part of an agenda I have continued to develop since the completion of my thesis. To begin, it is pertinent to provide some background to contextualize the research. As in many parts of the world during the COVID-19 emergency, particularly in large cities and urban areas, Costa Rica also experienced a surge in non-human vitality during the lockdown period, marked by sightings of wildlife in areas with high human activity. One of the principal actors in this surge was the coyote. The image on your screen, taken in the early months of 2020, shows a coyote spotted on the main campus of the Costa Rican Institute of Technology, one of the country's leading universities. This institution is located in the province of Cartago, approximately 20 kilometers from where I conducted my fieldwork. These images quickly went viral on social media and were used to alert the public to the potential for encounters with these animals. The first photographs were taken by the university's security staff, as the campus was empty of students and staff at the time. However, both the media and the university's outreach channels circulated these images to warn individuals who were still accessing the campus, many of whom were using the green spaces for recreational purposes, such as walking or bringing their pets, primarily dogs. Soon, national media began covering the coyote sightings at the Costa Rican Institute of Technology, and the images were published in the country's major newspapers. In these reports, the presence of coyotes was portrayed as a threat to the public, with the vitality of these animals being described as out of control, out of human control. Of course, headlines emphasized feelings of surprise, fear, and distrust toward the animal. The sightings were depicted as unprecedented events, urging the public to exercise caution. This situation is noteworthy due to the narrative that emerged around the coyotes. The fear of these animals during the lockdown was linked to the idea that an encounter could provoke an aggressive reaction, potentially with fatal consequences. In some cases, this unfounded perception of threat blended with other emotions, such as anxiety or distress. The highest number of coyote sightings in urban areas occurred between March and July of 2020, with a resurgence in January and February of 2021. However, the media impact of these reports was significant enough for citizens to begin constructing a narrative that the coyotes were out of place. This notion of being out of place is precisely what led me to ask, what is the place of coyotes? This question marked the beginning of the multispecies ethnography I developed as part of my doctoral fieldwork, which eventually led to encounters with the wolf dogs in San Jerónimo. After completing the first part of my research at the main campus of the Costa Rican Institute of Technology, where I interviewed the same security guards who had taken the initial photographs of the sightings, I moved to Irazu Volcano National Park to conduct the second part of my ethnographic work. Founded in 1955, this park was the first of its kind in Costa Rica. Located north of the province of Cartago in the Central Volcanic Range, it spans just over 2,000 hectares and is considered one of the main habitats for coyotes in the country. It is assumed that the protected area hosts one of the largest coyote populations in the province. Therefore, it is commonly believed that this is the natural habitat of the coyotes, at least those residing in Cartago province. Coyotes have become an emblematic species of the park. The image on your screen shows an informational sign welcoming visitors to the crater area, featuring the silhouette of a coyote. This type of signage is used for educational purposes regarding the typical wildlife of the area and in biodiversity management activities promoted by Costa Rica's National System of Conservation Areas. San Jerónimo is a community located on the slopes of Irazu Volcano in the northern part of Cartago. This area, which includes protected wilderness zones, residential areas, vegetable production activities, dairy farming, and emerging agroecotourism initiatives, is a place where the movement of coyotes and other wildlife species between different land parcels is common. San Jerónimo lies nearly 2,500 meters above sea level and has a lower montane wet forest climate. Temperatures range between 7.5 and 12 degrees Celsius, with annual rainfall varying between 1,600 and 2,000 millimeters. This climate, characterized by fog and cold temperatures for most of the year, is crucial for understanding the daily interactions between local residents and coyotes. Encounters with coyotes typically occur in vegetable fields and grazing lands, areas where farm caretakers, livestock handlers, and vegetable farmers have had the most frequent interactions with these animals. In the image, for instance, Don Leonardo Montenegro, the owner of a vegetable farm, shows a family member a video he recorded of coyotes on his property. The 7-hectare farm, located on the slope of Cerro Pasqui, is managed by Don Leonardo and his 7 siblings, and it also began to serve as a tourist destination during the pandemic. If I were to ask you what animal appears in this photo, you would likely say without hesitation that it is a coyote. At least, those familiar with its appearance would not be mistaken. And if any biologists were present, they would confirm with certainty that it is Canis latrans. However, if we ask the same question to residents of the communities near Irazu volcano, they would tell us that it is a wolf dog. This is where my ethnography becomes particularly compelling. Throughout the northern part of Cartago, residents refer to the coyote as wolf dog, or sometimes simply dog or wolf. The naming of the coyote plays a significant role in shaping the value attributed to it. When viewed as a dog, the connotation is positive. The dog is considered domestic, friendly, and harmless. In contrast, when regarded as a wolf, the connotation is negative. The wolf is perceived as wild, forest-dwelling, dangerous, and unpredictable. Who knows, they might attack. It's best to be cautious, several people told me during interviews. Don Fabio, Don Leonardo's brother and a dairy and milk products producer, also spoke to me about the presence of the wolf dog in the area. I will now share a fragment of his account, which I find particularly illustrative. I quote, "They've adapted to the noise of people, to the light, and to the sound of cars. They've lost their fear, so they come closer. Before, I imagine, they stayed only in the mountains. Now, they are here, listening to people and cars. If you stay still, without moving much, they'll stay close or pass by calmly. But if you make any sudden movement, they'll leave immediately. They are skittish. In the summer, when you're working, when the day is nice, you know they are nearby, even if you don't see them. Since we don't bother them, they've become tamer. They don't cause harm. The only case would be if an animal, a cow, falls down and can't get up. If an animal falls in the pasture and can't stand up, and they manage to get close, they'll tear it apart. Here, cows give birth and calves walk around, and nothing happens. I used to be afraid of the wolf dog, because I imagined it could be an animal that might attack me. Yes, you have to be careful when a female is with pups somewhere, and you approach without realizing it. It's never been seen, but it could be dangerous. Yes, they say you need to be cautious because they might attack, but to say that one of those dogs attacked you, that's a lie. They don't harm, nor do they kill chickens. On a farm nearby, there's dairy, yes, there are many of those dogs, because there are 2 deep ravines, and close to there, they have dens and you can hear them, coming from the Irazu volcano. Those animals have come a lot, feeding on rabbits and other animals from the mountain. We haven't figured out why they decided to come here, what it is they are looking for. Here people see the animal as something normal. Sometimes, people see them and say, oh, look. They're wolf dogs, how nice. They roam nearby. You might be walking, and there could be 2 or 3, and you could pass right by them without realizing it because they stay still. They have an admirable sense of smell because they could be walking on a trail, and if they are about to meet you and you stay still, they crouch down and change direction. In this area around the Irazu and Turrialba volcanoes, where there are more of those dogs, it's never been heard that they've attacked anyone." End quote. As observed in Don Fabio's account, the term wolf dog cannot simply be understood as a social construction of the coyote, nor as a symbolic representation of the animal in popular imagination. Rather, wolf dogs bring us closer to understanding the relational dynamics of coexistence established between each of these forms of vitality. Drawing on Karen Barrett's framework, we can assert that people and coyotes are constantly co-constituted through interactive and interactive bonds within and with the territory. In these instances, pure biologies are reshaped through visceral processes in which broader ecological, historical, and even economic and political factors play an essential role. While Canis latrans, as a taxonomic classification, provides distinguishing attributes to separate this species from other canines, the wolf dog embraces supposed differences to give rise to a distinct, territorial creature. This creature becomes an interstitial and elusive being, disregarding the boundaries of accepted categories and using conceptual contaminations as fertile ground for the emergence of new associations and identifications with the territory. The presence of wolf dogs evokes what Vinciane Despret refers to as unprecedented ways of living together. These are situated forms of cohabitation, which allow people to perceive the coyote's vitality beyond any formal category, recognizing it as an unfinished being, endowed with plasticity and capable of adapting to the demands and circumstances of the unstable environment. Wolf dogs, and more specifically their mobility, also serve as a conceptual bridge to reflect on landscape alterations and recall ecosystemic changes over time. Thus, a daily relationship is gradually constituted, linking the animal to these spaces and the practical knowledge that producers and dairy farmers have of them. In the accounts and anecdotes collected during my ethnographic fieldwork in the locality, it is common for people to mention seeing coyotes in places where there used to be more trees, indicating eco-memories or environmental memory. Often, encounters with wolf dogs occur without the mediation of visual perception. These encounters are activated through other senses. This is especially evident in soundscapes, which materialize not only through howling but also through the act of listening. Beyond becoming visible, wolf dogs become audible, initiating listening practices and fostering experimental developments that arise from a different mode of inhabitation. Their howls serve as a prelude to relationships that involve the participation of multiple senses, sensorialities, and other forms of perception, even if these events are predominantly acoustic. Shrouded in fog, coyotes are nearly impossible to see, yet their howls become easy to hear. Those who hear them regularly learn to identify the exact distance and location of their source. Isn't this intuitive learning remarkable? Personally, it both thrills and moves me. For, enveloped in mist, this covering allows the coyote, or wolf dog, not only to camouflage itself and go unnoticed when it does not wish to be seen, but also to transform the mist and other elements of the environment into active interlocutors in this multispecies dialogue. Through their howls, the wolf dogs make themselves visible to people and other beings without being seen. Cloaked in mist, they are there without being there. This ability transforms them into spectral presences, or, as Elizabeth Grosz suggests, bodies without a defined, or definable, form. This dynamic opens up the regenerative and relational potential of territories, creating space for alternative possibilities of cohabitability to emerge. To borrow from Anna Zing, one might argue that the presence of wolf dogs in these territories reminds us of what it means to live without the promise of stability. Together, humans, coyotes, and mist form networks of vitality that mark the rhythms and intensities of territorial change, rhythms that are more complex and subtle, imbuing daily life with latent meanings. This interplay offers stimulating perspectives for multispecies anthropological research in this Costa Rican territory. I have continued to reflect on the idea of the wolf dog spectrality since defending my thesis. This reflection has been primarily inspired by the emergence of a new area within the interdisciplinary field of multispecies studies, extinction studies. This field has redefined and enriched the concept of spectrality, referring to animals we have lost, those no longer with us. In other words, the ghosts of extinction. In more-than-human geography, scholars like Jamie Lorimer have paved the way for younger authors, such as Adam Searle and Jonathan Turnbull, to explore the voices we will no longer hear in their natural habitats. In this context, spectrality takes on a funerary character, becoming, as one might say, the elegy not only for the prolonged absence of an animal but also for a farewell, a goodbye, we are not yet ready to say. My interpretation of spectrality, however, is somewhat different, more vital, perhaps even hopeful, and maybe even eco-pedagogical. Unlike the animals that go extinct each day, coyotes seem to tell us, each time we see them in places we think they shouldn't be, look at us. We're here, and we're not going anywhere. This has significant implications for biodiversity management in Costa Rica, particularly for managing coyotes, which are classified as an exotic species with high invasive potential. This classification has reinforced negative cultural values associated with the animal. In this sense, I argue that wolf dogs become spectral presences in the territory. The wolf dogs, who may not be constrained by the pure biology of the coyote or the taxonomic classification of Canis latrans, suggest ontological contaminations that subvert fixed categories. Through this subversion, they offer a way to understand the coyote differently, a way that might even make it more intriguing to those who disdain its presence and the fact that it continues to move and adapt to new environments. This opens up new possibilities for studying what I call the ontopolitics of cohabitability, moving beyond the assignment of beings to predefined species, thus complicating and problematizing the linear narrative surrounding invasive species. In this way, coyotes or wolf dogs bring both disquiet and vitality to a world of deteriorated ecologies. To conclude this presentation, I invite you to listen to part of the polyphony they offer us. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to my presentation for the Anthrozoology as International Practice 2024 conference about the memorialisation of non-human animals, the stories, controversies and the disenfranchisements that may also surround them. Just a quick content warning before we start. Feel free to leave at any point should there be any mentions of anything that does cause you upset or distress. We will be focusing about the death of non-human life, mentions of non-human experimentation, mentions of non-human use in the entertainment industry, mentions of non-human life killed in times of war, possible mentions of non-human directed cruelty, and there will be mentions of mental health struggles, suicide, self-harm, and possibly addictions as well. Before we start looking at some of the historical memorials, I'd quite like to just take a quick look at some of the more popular modern-day memorials that we see. Tattoos are a huge one, which Dr. Chris Hill has very kindly done an amazing paper on. With the advancements of tattooing technology, you also have the option to add cremains to the ink itself, and so you can carry the deceased with you in the tattoo everywhere you go. Not everywhere does offer this, however, so make sure that you do find someone who is willing to, and make sure that you are happy with their portfolio of work as well. Now, tattoos are a very, very old tradition, and as time has progressed, the meaning behind tattoos has changed. They've gone from very tribal looking tattoos up to getting anything you could desire tattooed on yourself. And so a lot of people get images or something that reminds them of their companions tattooed on themselves in times of grief. Another big one that I see is fur clipping, feather keeping, dental imprints and scale patterns. People choose to keep a lock of fur or they may keep feathers, and people can do with them what they wish. Some people keep them on a shrine in their home, some people may put them in a pendant, or people may choose to use them in artwork for the deceased as well. Now, dental imprints are quite a new thing that I have come across. I haven't seen it much in the UK, however, I have seen it abroad. And it is a practice much like keeping a paw print or a nose print. It's something unique and specific to the individual to remember them by. And also scale patterns. A person at my old workplace had a sleeve tattoo on himself in the pattern of his deceased snake. He'd managed to somehow get the pattern of his scales and enlarge it so that a tattoo artist could actually tattoo it all over his arm. And I thought it was a lovely gesture to remember him by. Jokes and dark humour are another one as well. This is something that people use to cope emotionally, but also sometimes it can be a bit frightening when you use them, especially publicly due to the taboo nature of the joke, but also the fact that death itself is a taboo topic to talk about. However, in times of great emotional upset such as grief, humour can both lighten the mood, but it also can help ground us again. It can help bring our awareness back to the present and stop us dwelling on our past or worries about the future. I do use quite a lot of jokes and dark humour in my own grief. And even to this day, I will still make a couple of jokes here and there about the deceased to friends and family. But you also have to take into account that not everyone may understand the joke, and some people in the family may be more upset by the joke. And so it is knowing the audience in which you may make this joke towards. I just want to touch a little bit about disenfranchisement because it does run in tandem with grief, and especially with the grief that we feel towards non-human animals. So this is the lack of acceptance that the grief we feel towards non-human loss is valid at both the societal and the individual level. And I say a loss rather than death because people can lose their companions through them escaping the house, through fleeing from domestic violence, through fleeing from natural disasters, whereby the companion is still alive, however, they are lost in a different sort of sense than death. We may also see memorials that are being favoured, such as war memorials. These are a source of national pride, and therefore they may be seen as more favourable than personal memorials to the public. We may also see people who give their opinions on matters that don't concern them, such as memorials. These opinions may be at odds with how we are feeling or how we may wish to remember those that we have lost. Some people may simply not believe in the cause that a memorial is being erected for. This can be due to personal, moral, ethical, political, or cultural reasons. This may lead to people being belittled because of what they see as a worthy cause, and therefore it pushes them into a state of disenfranchisement. And one such example of people fighting at opposite ends of the spectrum can be seen here. The little brown terrier was a nameless victim of vivisection in the early 1900s at the University of London. The aftermath of this vivisection caused outrage within the anti-vivisectionists, and so much so that they decided to erect a statue in their memory. However, due to the lack of understanding surrounding non-human pain, emotions, and the widely held belief that other than human life feel pain much differently or don't feel it at all, non-human life wasn't given any sort of anaesthetics, and often vivisections may have been done live. So there was a statue that was erected, and it became the site of many riots between both medical students defending this practice and also the anti-vivisectionists who were opposing this practice. This led the statue to be vandalised, defaced, and also required the police to get involved. There were reports that the police had to set up a 24-hour watchman just to watch this statue to prevent any sort of vandalism. In 1910, it was deemed that the statue was too controversial, and therefore, in the dead of night, it was taken away. It was given, it was seen to be a waste of police time, money, resources, and with it being taken away, the story of the little brown dog also got taken away. That was up until 1985, in which the anti-vivisectionist movement came across the little brown terrier's account, and they decided to erect their own statue, which is seen in Battersea Park in London to this day. It is there to serve as a reminder of the struggles of all those who have been used in biomedical research and the pursuit of any scientific advancements, both past, present, and also in the future. Now, I'd just like to touch a little bit on Rainbow Bridge, because this is a very modern day example of a difference in memorial comforts. Now, Rainbow Bridge became very popular in the 1980s through poems and writings, and as time has progressed, people have added to it. This includes their own personal views that may be brought on through their religious or spiritual ideas, or it may be ideas that they've just come up with themselves. So this personal interpretation may be very off-putting to some, as they don't take the same level of comfort from the words that they have come up with themselves as the person who obviously came up with it. The rainbow flag is also a representative of the struggles the LGBTQ plus community have faced to be accepted and welcomed into society. And after doing a bit of research for my pet bereavement qualification, I found that those who identify with the LGBTQ plus community don't like the idea of Rainbow Bridge because they see the rainbow as a symbol of their happiness to be who they are without fear of persecution. And they don't wish for it to remind them of their grief at losing their companions. It can be seen as a cop-out to true empathy. So instead of sitting with someone and saying, I can see how much upset the loss has made you feel. If you would like to talk about it, I'm here to listen. This can invite a healthy discussion and an openness about the loss, and also help people feel valid and heard in their grief. But instead, some people may say, it's okay, they're going over Rainbow Bridge now, which is a very close thing, and it doesn't invite the level of openness to talk about how they are making them feel. This may cause them to bottle up their emotions, which can exacerbate any existing mental health conditions, or it may even contribute to mental health conditions developing within people. It can also be harmful in other ways, as it suggests that people who may suffer with suicidal thoughts or thoughts of self-harm being told that their companion is waiting for them at Rainbow Bridge, for them, they may have another 70 years left of their natural life, which they may interpret as too long for them to be waiting at Rainbow Bridge, and therefore it may exacerbate ideas of suicide or self-harm, and it may make people go through with decisions to harm themselves or, unfortunately, end their own life simply because they don't like the idea of their companions waiting for them for such a long time that they have to go and do it now to see them. It's also a very overgeneralized thing, and therefore people don't seek comfort from it as it isn't specific or unique to them or their loss. And it can be seen as a replacement for heaven, as in many faiths there is an idea that non-human animals actually don't enter heaven. And so the Rainbow Bridge is therefore a substitute, giving it a religious spin, which, if you aren't religious, you may not seek comfort from. So now I'd like to look a bit more at some historical memorials, and the first one I'd like to look at is Hyde Park in London. It was the first official UK pet cemetery to open, and it is thought to house 450 to 500 plots. However, due to weathering or erosion, vandalism, and the fact it's been over 100 years, there may be more that we haven't seen or we haven't found, or even we may find that there are unmarked graves there as well. Now, the first dog to be buried was called Cherry, and it's said that her family frequently came to the park as it was a place that Cherry loved to walk, loved to play with the children, and loved to be. And so, after Cherry died, the family approached the groundskeeper asking if there could be a place for them to bury Cherry and have a focal point for their grief. The groundskeeper is said to have been an intimidating fellow, agreed to this, allowing them to do so. And after this, many families travelled to bury their companions at the cemetery, with the groundskeeper unable to say no at any of their requests. Now, this is over 100 years ago, and so the validity of these claims may have been exaggerated. However, we do know that Cherry and many others are buried there to this day. The cemetery also shows division between rich and poor, and it can be quite a classist look. As in the late 1800s and early 1900s, it was mostly the affluent who could read and write and therefore take comfort from a headstone and the burial of their companions. Those in the working class may have been less inclined to get memorials despite their grief due to their inability to tell masons what they would like on a headstone. But also, we have to take into account that if they are unable to have been able to afford a headstone, would they have been able to afford the guardianship of non-human animals? Or even would they have been able to afford the provisions to care for non-human animals? And even if they were able to do this, they may not have been able to pay for a headstone, and therefore their companions were likely given an unmarked grave at best. But also, we can look at some of the names that Victorians used as well for companions. Baby is a common name that I've seen to this day. However, I'm yet to come across any non-human species called scum. Today, scum is seen as an insult. It's a derogatory word that humans call anything that may have upset us or annoyed us. However, as our language has evolved and as time has, the words may have changed meanings, or it may have been seen as a joke name, or it may have been a nickname for them that they've decided to have put on a headstone. So we've got to take into account that while some words may have been, while some names may have been very shocking to us, some may have been comforting. It was what brought them comfort, and clearly what brought them comfort was the name Scum. Just like to touch a bit on Greyfriars Bobby, as his story is one that serves as a reminder between the bond of man and his dog. Um, it's said that it was a night watchman who had a little Skye Terrier to act as his alert dog on his patrols. The man had died, and Bobby is said to have remained at his grave for 14 years before dying himself. This is a story that tugs at many people's heartstrings. However, Edinburgh at the time was a port city, and while I don't doubt there was a night watchman and a Skye Terrier, the story itself may have been fabricated or at least exaggerated and embellished over the years to fit a narrative and draw in attention or tourism, get a bit more footfall into the city, therefore creating revenue. And we can see memorials to Bobby in the likes of Bobby's Bar, statues, blogs, films. There's been a whole film directed about him, and also the songs as well about Bobby and his 14 years of sitting at the graveside. And this has helped keep his memory alive over the 152 years since his death, keeping it in the public consciousness. But again, as time has gone on, people have told their own stories about Bobby, and um, the actual truth behind it may have been lost many, many years ago, or it may still be out there to this day. So now I want to look at memorials to specific causes, and the first one I'd like to look at is greyhound racing. Now, greyhound racing is what some may call entertainment, however, others may call it barbaric. And this statue itself is located in Holywell Pet Cemetery, North Wales, and the plaque itself reads, in memory of all the greyhounds raced, fallen, and broken since 1926. Over 1 million dogs killed and puppies without number, denied the chance to play and live. Rest in peace, lest we forget. And that was donated by Caged Northwest. And to me, I find it such a lovely memorial because I've taken guardianship of ex-racers throughout my all my life, really. So I'm a bit biased when it comes to this one. Um, but I think it's a lovely memorial, not just because it's a memorial to those who have raced, but also it brings awareness to those who haven't raced, and the fact that um, there are those who didn't make the cut for racing, and so it may inspire questions of, well, what happened to them? Have they been killed? Have they been given to a rescue? Did they get kept as companions? But it's also one um, that brings awareness to the public about the racing industry. And a memorial can also be seen to the living as well. To those who have guardianship of ex-racers, they may look upon it and be thankful that their greyhound isn't part of the statistic anymore. Thankful that they've escaped this industry, and while they may hold physical or the psychological trauma from it, they are more likely to have had a better life outside of this industry with them as the guardians. For me, when I saw it, I was contemplating those who were injured and killed, and then I sort of looked upon Might and was grateful that I could give them a life of trust and love and give them as much freedom to choose what they want to do as I can feasibly afford them. Um, Unlike what they would have had, unfortunately, racing. Now, I'd like to touch a little bit on other than human memorials of war. We can see many, many different memorials to this reason, starting off with the Dickie Medal. This medal is part of the PDSA, and it is a medal said to be on par with the Victoria Cross for human acts of bravery and heroism in the field. Maria Dickin created the idea in 1943, and there have since been 75 recipients. Some of them have been given it posthumously. So there's 38 dogs, 32 pigeons, 4 horses, and 1 cat that have all been awarded the Dickie Medal. And the Dickie Medal is one that should be associated and worn by those who have earned the right to wear it. So the recipient of it, so the non-human species which has been awarded, or their guardian. And the PDSA actually has an area in a cemetery in Ilford, London, where you can actually see Dickie Medal recipient headstones and also the grave plots as well. The next one I'd like to look at is the purple poppy. So the purple poppy was first created by Animal Aid in 2006 to serve as a reminder that non-human lives have served and died in acts of war, and they have made sacrifice for conflicts that are all man-made. It is often associated with the death of those who have been drafted for war and use in the military-industrial complex or police forces, but it can also serve as a reminder to those who are alive or retired due to age or medical conditions. This can be worn by anyone, no matter who they are, as long as they wish to remember those who have died in war. It is becoming more and more popular now, possibly due to the rise in social media and the ease in which we can get information to and from each other, and the ease in which we can also buy things online as well, such as the purple poppy. However, the true meaning behind it, that Animal Aid wanted to push, was to show that non-human species are victims of war. They aren't fighting alongside, they are in fact victims. They are recruited as unwilling participants and forced into fighting conflicts that they themselves have not created. And this idea was to raise awareness in the hopes that we can start changing the public's view on non-human death in war and use in war. However, it has since become, the purple poppy itself has since become a symbol of remembrance rather than the true meaning Animal Aid had. So Animal Aid changed to a purple paw instead, so that they can keep promoting this message in the hopes of changing the public's view and educating them on how war affects non-human species. And my last slide is just to show a big purple poppy that was on display in Southport, surrounded by all the red poppies, which is in remembrance of human life lost. It was taken in Southport when I went to visit the other week, around the time of Remembrance Day. This is all my references, and I would just like to say a big thank you to the AIP team for giving me the chance to speak and inviting me to talk.